pricked his ears up. Even though he's a German dog, he likes the Italian car. Actually, that was very sexist of me. Could have been a bitch. Oh, now there, that's interesting. When you hit bigger bumps, you do get quite a douche. And there, it can feel a bit lumpy. I do think that the air suspension that you get on something like a Bentley Bentayga Speed does just deal with bumps so much better. If you want to see my full in-depth video review of that car, just click on the pop-out banner or follow the QR code on the screen now. Sorry, it's not an SUV, but it is an SUV. Oh. And you know what? It feels quite manic. That's quite interesting about it, actually. So you don't have the wallop of torque that you get from like the turbocharged SUVs. Instead, you chase the revs. You actually find yourself going surprisingly quicker than you think because you've gone through the rev range and you look down at the speedometer and you're like, oh my gosh, that is a lot of speed. Despite the speed though, you know, you go into a corner and it really does just stay completely flat. It's so responsive for an SUV. I think it is the most responsive of all the sporty SUVs I've driven. There is another thing about it. While it's the sportiest, unless the conditions are dry, then it can be one of the scariest. In fact, it does just feel like a Ferrari sports car when you are driving it slightly quickly in the wet. The setup of the four-wheel drive system means that most of the time it just drives like a rear-wheel drive car. And so if you put your foot down suddenly in the wet, it can step on you. I had that earlier, it just went sideways on me, even though I was in sports setting, not with the stability all the way off, and it was quite frightening. I did manage to gather it back up again, so it was fine. But you do notice if the conditions aren't quite perfect and the road is a bit bumpy, it's sort of like tram lines quite a bit when you're accelerating. Now my viewpoint on that is a bit mixed, so it does have an edge to it. You do have to have your wits about you with it. So then, what's my final verdict on the new Ferrari Purosangue? Should you avoid it? Should you consider it? Should you shortlist it? Or should you just go right ahead and buy it? Well, if you get the opportunity, you should just go right ahead and buy it because you could sell it the next day for a profit, but that's not the real reason. I think you should go right ahead and buy it because it's such a special feeling car for an SUV, even though it's not an SUV, but it is an SUV, though it's the only SUV with a naturally aspirated V12 and that feels genuinely sporty to drive.